Would anybody like a hat?
And I'm standing here because...
Hello, I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report. It's April 3rd, 2025. We're live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and Locals. Post-game show, as always, rubinreport.locals.com. And we've got a community Q&A on the second half of today's program. If you want to get questions in on the fly, although I've got about a dozen ready to rock right here, you can join us, download the Locals app, join the Rubin Report community. We also have an Android app, all that good stuff, or you can do it on your desktop. Do people have desktop? Do they sit at a desk with a big computer anymore? If you've got a Gateway 2000 or a Neo Geo, was that a computer? Or anyway, if you're sitting at a desk typing on something, you can probably get the app and join us, rubinreport.locals.com. We're just going to catch up on a bunch of news. Obviously, the tariff thing seems to have taken over the news. You know, we went through the signal scandal last week, and it largely has disappeared. Now we have a tariff scandal and some other things that are happening, and then we'll get to the question and answer in just a moment. Let's just dive right in, though. First, I want to start off with this clip from, as you know, this guy, Jon Stewart. I was an intern at The Daily Show in 1999. I used to love this guy. He should have been sort of, over the last 20 years, the guy that was standing up for true liberalism. He really could have been the mainstream guy doing that. And unfortunately, he went all the way with the crazy leftist stuff and the gender stuff and the woke stuff and Trump is evil and a Nazi and all of that. And it's been a damn shame. He seems at the moment to be going through a bit of a wake up. I don't know him personally, so I can't say whether it's authentic or not. But anyway, he had an economist on, a guy by the name of Oren Cass, and they were talking about the liberal order that seems to be failing, sort of the post-World War II liberal order in the West. And listen to how they have this conversation where they're kind of getting the ideas right. We need strong alliances, we need fair trade, we need perhaps shared defense, the liberal order post-World War II, but they seem to not be able to quite connect that to Donald Trump.
Would you, do you think, what do you think is going to happen? Or do you worry about the instability of not easing this transition? But is this and look, I've read the whole Mar-a-Lago Accord, and I don't know if that's a conspiracy, but is the idea that there's some master plan of we create this chaos, we cause all this thing, to draw people to Mar-a-Lago where they renegotiate our nation's debt? Is that something that you think is plausible? Or is that what this is all about? Is that why they're not doing it in a way that seems more thoughtful?
So let me say two things about it. The first is, I think a lot of the critiques of how it's being done are very fair. And I think it's important to distinguish that from the discussion of the principles. Because I think the principles are important, and we should want to have the right set of principles and not throw them out just because they're not being pursued in the way we might like. When it comes to something like the Mar-a-Lago Accord, I think what you see people talking about and trying to move toward is to say, if we think this sort of liberal world order system, first of all, even if it was serving the US well at one point, is not serving it as well anymore. Second of all, to some extent may just be going away anyway. China is now rising as a peer competitor. The US cannot be a unipolar hegemon like it was when the Cold War ended. So if we accept that things are going to change, we should have a perspective on what we want to follow. Mm-hmm. And something that I've been writing about a lot is trying to interpret and decipher what that might look like. Because again, it's a very fair critique. They have not been as clear about it as we should want them to be. What I think we should want, and what, like I said, folks in the administration like a Marco Rubio or a Scott Bessent, who I think do write and speak thoughtfully about it, have pointed toward, is the idea that we absolutely want a strong economic and security alliance. It's not going to be the whole world, because China is going to have its own sphere as well. But what we want to have within our sphere is a few things that in the past the US didn't necessarily ask for. We're going to want balanced trade, where in the past we were happy to let the manufacturing go elsewhere. We're going to want others to essentially own their own defense burdens. That doesn't mean we're not partnering and working together, but that everybody takes primary responsibility for their own defense.
I have to say, having watched that 3 times this morning, it gets worse every time. I don't know how people watch these shows. First off, Jon is just so muddled, the way he can't even get through a sentence because he's not sure what his audience thinks, sort of. It's really strange. But then, interestingly, The Economist, and I don't know where his politics lie, basically is laying out the case for Trump foreign policy. Maybe that was his intention. I don't know that the Daily Show people would have put him on if they knew that was his intention, because Jon is basically like, look at all of this chaos. Is the chaos intentional to do things in a whole new way? Well, first off, really, what is the chaos right now? We have closed our border. We are making sure our cities are safer. We are doing stuff through tariffs and other economic means to encourage more fair trade deals. We'll have plenty more on that in just a moment. Now, that could cause some temporary bumps, but is this chaos that we're going through? Or is it just that you guys, what you're describing as the liberal world order, which should have been much better than it ended up being, are losing power, so you think it's chaos? Because what the guy lays out there is, what do we want? We want strong economic security. Okay, fine. We want fair trade deals. Okay, fine. We want to make sure other countries pay for themselves, pay their fair share. Like, what does this all sound like? This all sounds like Trump stuff. So I would say to Jon Stewart, if you're watching this, I hate to tell you, dude, but even though you for 20 years were one of the leaders of the anti-Trump charge and led to all of the progressive madness, and you pushed all of that trans stuff and everything else, if you agree with what that guy just said, you're kind of getting on the Trump train now. Maybe that's why you had the guy on the show, because you subtly know it. Anyway, yesterday, Trump announced that it was Liberation Day, and he laid out how the U.S. has been ripped off on these trade deals, which is exactly what the economist Oren Cass just said right there on The Daily Show, and how that foreign nations are going to have to pay for access to our market. We're going to do things more fairly instead of just having wackadoodle tariffs. If we try to sell rice in Russia, 700% tariff, or if we try to sell dairy in Canada, 300% tariff, we're going to start evening the playing field so that we can compete and, I don't know, maybe build and make things in America again. How novel.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. The fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a disaster. The United States charges other countries only a 2.4 tariff on motorcycles. Meanwhile, Thailand and others are charging much higher prices, like 60%. India charges 70%. Vietnam charges 75%, and others are even higher than that. Likewise, until today, the United States has for decades charged a 2.5 tariff. Think of that, 2.5% on foreign-made automobiles. The European Union charges us more than 10% tariffs, and India charges 70%. Foreign nations will finally be asked to pay for the privilege of access to our market, the biggest market in the world. We're right now the biggest market in the world.
Okay, so as I've been saying all week with this, you can make arguments for or against tariffs. And actually, in a moment, we're going to show you Thomas Sowell, who has not made a public appearance in a long, long time, but he just did. And he's actually anti-tariff, which is what I said yesterday. The pure libertarian argument on this would be anti-tariff. You want the government out of the way of the markets as much as possible. But Trump is not a pure libertarian. He's a conservative trying to use government in specific ways, meaning to even the playing field. And you can have an honest and nuanced debate about it. Phoenix and I this morning went through a whole bunch of guests that we want to have on the show on both sides of this to start bringing on to have an interesting debate about economics and does this stuff work. Also, Trump makes a good point that the people who've gotten everything wrong, right? All the economists, all the people on TV and everything else, they're the ones that are upset right now. But it's like, what did you guys do over the last 3 decades? What you did was make sure that we have these ridiculous trade deals so that if you're buying a motorcycle in America, there's a 2.5 tariff to get in, but it's a 70% tariff to get out, to get into, say, Vietnam. That's what he just laid out right there. So all we're trying to do is even the playing field. Trump then continued laying out, and he's talked a bit about this, but he added some companies on this, major worldwide companies that are now investing in America.
Here are just a short list of some of the companies that have already announced and committed to investment. Apple is going to spend $500 billion. SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle, great companies, are investing $500 billion almost immediately. NVIDIA, a hot company, is investing hundreds of billions of dollars. They just announced TSMC is investing $200 billion, and they said the reason was, number one, the election of November 5th, and number two, the tariffs. Johnson & Johnson, great company, $55 billion. Eli Lilly, $27 billion. Meta is investing $500 billion. DeMac is investing $20 billion. CMA, CGM, $20 billion. And then you have Merck and Clarios, Stellantis, General Motors, GE Aerospace, Honda, Nissan, Hyundai are all putting in billions and billions of dollars, and they're committed 100%.
Okay, so if you think about the clip that we started with, if you're talking about the chaos that Jon Stewart's referencing, the chaos seems to be that companies are investing again in America. Why did all of those companies not do those massive investments in America under Joe Biden? And why are they doing it now? That is the question. And again, when he says, hey, for 30 years, these guys have gotten everything wrong and we've been getting screwed on all of these deals, he's right. Now, his former vice president, who is no fan of the current president, Mike Pence, he tweeted this: the Trump tariff tax is the largest peacetime tax hike in U.S. history. These tariffs are nearly 10 times the size of those imposed during the Trump-Pence administration and will cost American families over $3,500 per year. Check out Spoiling America's Golden Age at America Freedom, which I assume is a nonprofit that he works with. Look, now this is the part where we're in that bump phase, which is exactly what Trump and Elon talked about during the election, that they were going to change things. They were going to change our trade deals. Again, whether you agree with it or not, he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do, right? He said we are not going to have these crazy lopsided trade deals with China and with Canada and all of these other countries. And several countries, we showed you a list yesterday, have already completely eliminated their tariffs because of this. Again, that's separate from your philosophical position on tariffs. That's just the reality of what is happening right now. Eric Daughtry from Florida News tweeted this regarding Mike Pence's tweet. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick issues new statement on Mike Pence's opposition to Trump's tariffs. Mike Pence is just bitter. These tariffs are the definition of America first, which is a concept that he doesn't understand. So look, if Pence is right, we'll pick it up in a year from today. Phoenix, make a note in the calendar. 1 year from today, we'll pick it up and we'll see, has the average American family spent $3,500 more on goods and services because of these tariffs, or were the tariffs basically a starting point in negotiation to get fairer deals? I think you know my position on that, but now I want to show you, because we're a fair show over here, I want to show you one of my absolute heroes. You guys ask me in the Q&As all the time, what is the interview that I enjoyed most after, for the decade plus that I've been doing this? And it is when I went to Stanford and interviewed Thomas Sowell. He does not do many interviews. We've been trying to coordinate something. We're still working on it. But he did an interview with Peter Robinson at Stanford. This is in the very same, Peter's in the very same studio that we were in. And here he is criticizing Trump's tariff. So I'm trying to show you every side of this. Take a look.
What do you make of the present President of the United States and his tariffs?
It's painful to see what a ruinous decision from back in the 1920s being repeated. Now, insofar as he's using these tariffs to get very strategic things settled, and that he is satisfied with that. But if you set off a worldwide trade war, that has a devastating history. Everybody loses because everybody follows suit, and all that happens is that you get a great reduction in international trade. But if you are the one who's making the rules, then all the other people have no idea what you're going to do next. And that is the formula for having people hang on to their money until they figure out what you're going to do.
Okay, first, I want to make note, he is 94 years old, and he's still sharp as a tack, and he's still got it. And again, we're working on that interview, so stay tuned on that. We'll probably go up to Stanford and do that. He's making an interesting point there. what you don't want to do is set off a worldwide trade war, right? So you suddenly rejigger the entire system, right? And you start charging people different things and you rip up all these deals. And then what happens is every country could basically be like, okay, we're not doing trade anymore. We're going to do everything ourselves. And then you upend the way that we've been operating sort of post World War II, right? Like that is an argument you can make. The question here is this just the bump that Trump and Elon talked about? We're going to try to make things a little bit fairer. And then if we make things a little bit fairer, which again, already several countries have just completely removed their tariffs altogether because Trump did this, then we'll be able to produce things here in the United States again, right? We're a consumption economy. We don't really produce things. We used to have steel factories and things like that. Now we outsource everything. Everything you buy says made in China on it. There is a reason for that. So that's Sowell's opinion on that, what could happen. That's a little bit counter to certainly what Trump's been laying out and what I've been laying out here. This is former Commerce Secretary Carlos Gutierrez, who was Commerce Secretary under George Bush, talking about how Trump's tariffs are a tool to get people to the negotiating table.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
What do you make of these tariffs right now and the ultimate impact to the U.S. economy and trade?
Well, I would say, like most people, this was stronger than what many of us expected. But it's the opening step. So I would assume that this will not be in place in a month, 2 months, definitely not in the back half of the year. So I'm in the camp that this is the beginning of a big negotiation. And it's not only about bringing production back, but it's also about market access. So if Germany brings down their tariffs, then that gives U.S. companies more access to the German market.
Okay, so that's basically laying out the point that Lutnick pointed out earlier, which is that this is a negotiation point. Like, it's not America first, or it's not even, you don't have to be America first, you don't have to be MAGA. It's not pro-America in any way if every deal we have with every other country basically is screwing us, right? We're going to allow you, whatever country it is, to sell your stuff here cheap, and if we try to export our cars to you, we basically can't do it, right? And we've gone through the laundry list of things. It's not just cars, it's rice, it's dairy goods, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is this just a negotiation point, and what level of chaos or craziness are we gonna have? Sowell might be right. This gets us in this like massive, massive trade war and countries start disassociating from each other and everything else, or there's new alliances made. Or we have this weird, couple week period probably, where countries are like, boy, we did like access to the American market, and now we don't really have that because Trump isn't allowing us to do it so cheaply anymore, so we're going to have to do something a little more even. My gut feeling it's going to be the latter, but either way, whether you take the purely libertarian position on this or you take, let's say, the America First position on this, I would say it is largely better than the previous administration.
Today, 15 recipients of the Nobel Prize in Economics released a letter in support of the president's Build Back Better plan,
including 4 Nobel Prize winners recently highlighted in an open letter.
17 Nobel laureates who have conveyed this will help address inflation.
14 Nobel laureates in economics said it'll actually bring down the cost. It will reduce the deficit, and it will totally paid for, and it's going to reduce inflation. 17 Nobel laureates in economics. 15 Nobel laureates in economics released a letter yesterday. 17 Nobel Prize winners in economics.
All right, so do you see a little bit of the difference between what's going on now and went on for 4 years, putting aside Biden's cognitive abilities and the fact that nobody knew who was in charge and everything else like that? Instead of just going to the expert class, and I don't fully hate the expert class. My friend Eric Weinstein just walked into the studio. He's in Miami. Why? Why is he in the studio? Nobody knows. He's an economist. He's a bit of an expert. I don't hate the experts, but we're doing things a little bit differently. We had an administration that ran, or that I don't even think they ran the country, that just frauded us across the board on everything because they could say, okay, we had Nobel laureates that said this, that, the other thing. Trump is actually trying to change things, which again is exactly what he ran on. And it's exactly why people are going crazy right now, because it's the same thing as what Elon's been saying with Doge. The people who are most upset with Doge are the people who the discovery now is leading to their fraudulence. That basically is where we're at. So let's put aside tariffs and economics for a moment and talk about the border, because this is another thing. They told us we couldn't first they told us we had no border problem, then they told us we couldn't fix the border, and yada, yada, yada. We fixed it. Here's Tom Homan, Borders Czar Tom Homan, has announced that from January 20th to April 25th, January 20th, April 2025, to April 1st, only 9 illegal aliens were released into the United States. Under the same time period in Biden's final year, that number was 184,241. So we went from 184,241 to 9. Do you think you can fix things if you just want to fix things? Do you think you can fix the border without a bipartisan bill? Remember the bipartisan bill 2 years ago that Biden was demanding we sign and Chuck Schumer wanted to sign? We have to have a bipartisan deal to protect the border. And no, it turns out you just didn't need to reverse those 67 some odd executive actions that Trump took on the border the first time. And then the second Trump came into office, what did he do? He reversed the Biden stuff. We told the world, you can't come here right now. We have to clean our house first. We have to have an orderly way in. No one's saying nobody can come here, but maybe qualified people should come here. Maybe you have to have a guarantee of a job. Maybe you have to have family members here, some way of making means, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, as we bring some of these jobs back, as these corporations invest in America again, then guess what happens? We get jobs here. And then maybe we can bring in people in an orderly fashion, but I would say less, I don't know, Trendeawagwa, terrorists and gang members, et cetera, et cetera. This is a tweet I saw yesterday. We'll have my response above, but look at this from Anna Sabalos of the Miami Herald. This is how backwards the media and the Dems get everything consistently. New Florida troopers patrolling the state's roadways are being told to arrest and jail undocumented immigrants on offenses like driving without a valid driver's license as a way to help push more people on the path to deportation. Connor, leave that up for a moment. Do you see what they're doing here? She's trying to frame this. I retweeted it. I said, breaking, Florida is awesome. They're trying to frame it somehow that Florida is doing something bad here. So let's very quickly unpack this. What are Florida troopers doing? Well, they're patrolling the state's roadways. That's what they're supposed to do. They're arresting and jailing undocumented immigrants. Well, they're undocumented. That means illegal. She could have wrote illegal. And when someone's doing something illegal, you might be in some sort of legal trouble. And if you're driving without a valid driver's license, I got pulled over once and I was driving without my license had expired. You get in a bit of trouble. But it's everything. This is exactly what the show was about yesterday. These people will constantly always point you to the bad people and tell you they're doing good things, and they'll point you to the good people and tell you they're doing bad things. That is what they do. And the truth of the matter is we have a country, we have sovereign borders, we can decide who is here, and we don't necessarily want everybody here. That's not racist. It doesn't mean I'm a dick. But you have a door. Do you have a door at your house? You guys all have doors. You're in condos, but you have doors, right? You don't just let anyone in. If you have a door at your house, you discriminate. You discriminate who can come in your house. Eric knocked on my door today. I said, well, all right, fine, you can come in. But there was a chance I wasn't going to let him in. And the question is, do you want people like this? Here, I'm going to show you a video of children who are wonderful. Children are just great. They're wonderful. They're spectacular. Everyone loves children. They're so good-hearted and everything else. Here's some children in Syria threatening to kill a Sky News journalist. You tell me if you want them in the country.
We're going to behead you, they're saying, alongside cutting motions. Look how young these kids are. I mean, some of them don't look more than 6, 8, 10, but they're making very violent gestures towards us. And this is what many are worried about, because they have been kept in this very difficult situation for so many years. And those are the ones, these young people, who they fear might be used as IS recruits.
Some of these ISIS wives and families have been here for more than 6 years. Many of the children have been born here and don't like outsiders, particularly Western ones.
That's literally when I'm like, Justin, Luke, do you guys want waffles instead of pancakes this morning? Like that. That's what goes on up here. Look, joking aside, I have nothing but sympathy for these kids, right? These kids, the geopolitics of what's going on, the religious version of what's going on, the oppression, all of these things, a country that is basically a failed state at this point that's being run by various gangs and there's bombs going off all over the place. So I have sympathy for the child who then is doing this, of course. But the question as all of this is happening is, well, usually we see men of fighting age coming into this country, right? How many videos have we shown you just at the border? That was what woke Bobby Kennedy up, 2 years ago, basically, when he finally went to the border and he was like, this is a little weird. Everyone coming through is a male between 20 and 40 and there's no women and children. But the point is, even with those children who now have been brainwashed, is it incumbent on us to bring them into our country, especially when all of our countries in the West seem to have just unimaginably huge internal problems? So let's jump across the pond to the UK. Keir Starmer, he is just terrible. I mean, it's incredible to me that this guy is the Prime Minister of the UK. Here he is blaming violent crime in the UK on young boys because, they're misogynists.
Work together, and what can we do as a society to stop and prevent young boys being dragged into this whirlpool of hatred and misogyny. And it is young boys predominantly in this particular instance. But also, how can we protect young girls that are at risk? Because obviously that's a very strong feature of the documentary, the drama. And that again, as I say, my boy is 16, my girl is 14, so I'm seeing this very much through both sets of eyes, and that's why I think it hits hard.
Yes, it's the young boys, it's the young British boys and girls who are rampaging through the streets of London with Hamas signs, who are vandalizing monuments and taking over schools and going to Columbia here, if we just do the American version of it. Yes, it's the young boys who have been taught to hate girls. And then there's another version of it. That's the biggest problem that you have in the UK. Not the immigration problem, not the cultural problem. Again, always shell game with these people. It has nothing to do with anything they've done. It's your problem. Native British guy who just wants to go to the pub and raise a family. It's your problem. And we also showed you the video yesterday where they're literally going to have a 2-tier system of justice in the UK, where if you are a white male, you will have a harsher sentence for the exact same crime than a black person or a woman or a lesbo or a gay dude or whatever else. You might say that's crazy, but we have versions of this in America too. Michelle Wu, who's probably, it's hard to say who's the worst Democrat mayor. It is definitely hard to say, but Michelle Wu over in Boston seems to be trying to win the award, which we send out at the end of the year. Here she is, and again, she's still, despite everything, she wants a sanctuary city. She can't make a distinction between legal and illegal alien, and she just wants more of these people, and she wants to take your money and give them shit.
What do you say to the people who, in your constituency, who might feel like, hey, why are we doing this? What's the big deal with this sanctuary city thing? If people are illegally in the country, shouldn't we arrest them and get rid of them? What is the big deal?
Yeah, we are, again, we're the safest city because we're safe for everyone. In a community where over a quarter of your residents were born in another country, if people are afraid to drop their kids off at school or call 911 when they need help or share information when they actually have information to report about a crime that happened, that makes everyone less safe, whether or not you are an immigrant, whether or not you're here in this country 6 generations or just arrived.
That was the Daily Show again. Apparently that's what happened to Jon Stewart after eating too much Kung Pao chicken. I don't know. They just have a rotating group of hosts because nobody likes any of them. So they're just like, Monday you do it, Tuesday you do it, whatever. I don't even know who that guy is. Doesn't matter. The point is, again, she's just, everyone in America, everyone, melting pot. We're all fine with it. We don't care whether you come from Asia or Latin America or Eastern Europe or anywhere else. Come here legally and you're part of the thing. And try to speak our language maybe, and then bring your foods, and bring your clothes, and bring your music, and your hobbies, and your habits. And then you become part of a community. As I always point out when we do this, I live in Miami. I walk outside, I hear mostly Spanish. I would like people maybe to speak a little more English here. I think it would be better for culture in long term. But the point is that there's all sorts of people here. And if you love America, so I hear a lot of Spanish here because there's a lot of Cubans here, right? But Cubans love America. They love freedom. So even if we have a little bit of a language barrier, which I do think is an issue long-term over time, you go a couple generations where you don't speak the same language as your neighbor, even if you both love the country, it's like, well, what actually do you love if you don't have a language that you can communicate with. If you can't walk next door and ask for an egg in the same language, like that can become a problem. But she makes completely no distinction between legal and illegal. And if we don't do that, dare I quote a certain orange man with crazy hair from 2015, then you don't have a country. Let's talk about G-Defy shoes, and then we'll have more on the other side. You guys know I'm all about logic and reason, and here's some simple logic. If your feet are killing you at the end of the day, you need new shoes. That's why I love G-Defy shoes by Gravity Defier. They're built on real science, not trends. Their patented VersoShock technology absorbs harmful shock, returns energy, and is designed to align your body and makes walking, running, and standing feel effortless. Whether you're out and about or just on your feet all day, G-Defy makes every step better. Right now, you guys can get 30% off orders over $120. Just text Rubin30 to 91888 or visit gdefy.com and use code Rubin30 at checkout. Use logic, choose comfort, G-Defy. All right, so this video is absolutely spectacular. Let's just jump for a second. So we've done obviously a bit on trade here, and we've done a bit on borders and immigration. So let's jump to education. This really is spectacular. If you really want to see a perfect example of how different things are now, how we went from 4 years and really more than that for quite some time of people kind of lying to us about everything, no one ever telling the truth, no one ever confronting anyone about the lies, and that thus the lie was just perpetuated constantly. Well, take a look at this. So this is Representative Melanie Stansbury. She is not happy that we are taking out the Department of Education. And Linda McMahon, who of course was one of the co-founders of what I knew as the WWF back in the day, it's now the WWE with Vince McMahon. She is worth billions of dollars. She took the job to head the Department of Education to literally, as she said, put herself out of a job, okay? So Melanie Stansbury is not happy about this. She's giving a press conference outside the Capitol. Linda McMahon decides to show up and take the microphone and this is so good, it's hard to believe it actually happened.
Along a corporate model without a plan and without an effort to really protect our students. So we want to be clear about that. I want to say one other thing, the mood in the room, it was very collegial. We are extraordinarily grateful to the Secretary that she joined us. Thank you. She's here. Perhaps I should give her the podium. We're extraordinarily grateful that the Secretary gave us the space to have these conversations. But with all due respect, Madam, I think my biggest concern is that the states will not be able to protect the programs and services that you would like to devolve with them.
Okay, don't worry, we're going to show you the part where she gets up there. But so you get what's going on here. They're basically taking out the Department of Ed, and the argument that Trump has made is pretty much the states' rights argument and the school choice argument, that education is best done locally, right? And you can figure out how to fund that. Either you have a certain amount of public schools that are funded by the taxpayer. You can get credits so the child can go to a charter school. You could do homeschooling, you could do pod schooling. But the argument that I absolutely believe in is that the more competition you have within that the better even the state schools will get. And that way you don't, just because of the zip code you live in, have to send your kid to a failing school. So anyway, they're not thrilled with that because they like the Department of Education. They like sort of the top-down way of looking at the world. Here's Linda McMahon taking the podium.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. And I just want to express my gratitude to all of these folks who came today so that we could have an open discussion about what I believe is one of the most important things that we can have a discussion on or action on in our country, and that is the education of our young people. As Representative Tanaka said as we were ending the meeting, which I thought was incredibly appropriate, and that is that this is not a partisan issue. This is about the children of America. And it's the next generation, the generation after that. And if we want to have our leaders, if we want to have that next group of engineers and doctors and lawyers and plumbers and electricians and HVAC operators, then we need to focus on how they can best have their education. And I believe, and I know the president does believe this as well, the best education is that is closest to the child, where teachers and parents, local superintendents, working together and local school boards to develop the curriculum for those students is the best way.
Clean, clear, she's respectful. She showed up to the press conference where they were kind of going after her to lay out the case. And the case, again, is that you want it to be closest to the child, wherever you live. Do you want the curriculum that your child is learning to be some giant thing that comes from DC that should be all over the country? Or do you want to have a little more involvement because maybe the state sets a curriculum, the state then decides how the funds are going to be used so that you can, as I just said, do the charter school thing or the public school thing or the homeschool thing, et cetera, et cetera. Florida's a great example of this because we have school choice and our education in Florida. Florida education in the 80s was the joke of the country because it was all old people moving down here and there was no state income tax and people didn't want to pay for public education because the people were like, we're grandparents, we don't want to pay for it anymore. And Florida had pretty bad schools. Over the last decade or so, largely because of DeSantis, as we've allowed for school choice suddenly, and then we got an influx of about 1 million people post-COVID, you have all these new people coming in, figuring out new ways to think of schooling. And what that's done, Florida is literally, I think it was it World News? What is it? World News and Report? What the hell is that called? U.S. News and World Report. I think they ranked Florida just 2 weeks ago #1 in education. And it's because we have some layer of competition right now. So that really is the point. And you know this. If you're a parent, you know this. What do you want? If you had a problem with your kid at school, your kid wasn't learning or the kid was in a fight or, I don't know, the teacher was calling your son a daughter, would you rather have to deal with that at the local level with the superintendent and the principal and the administrators there, or you want to fight the system? You want to fight DC? So much of what's going on here is the thing is being unmasked, and certain people would like that mask to stay on. So what have we done here? We've done tariffs, we've done border, now we did education. Now let's talk about how boys and girls are different, because they are. I saw a Kindergarten Cop, and remembering Kindergarten Cop, when that kid said to Arnold Schwarzenegger, boys have penises and girls have vaginas, I learned pretty much everything I needed to know. For some reason, that hasn't permeated through much of the country. And now finally, because the culture has changed, girls who have been abused, they've been abused by the system, by the feminists who said they would always protect women, wanted to help women. They allowed these boys, and that's what they are, to come in and beat them in wrestling and beat them in swimming and beat them in all of these, and basketball and everything else. You've seen all the videos, but this is just a great moment because it's still happening in some of these states. And here's a female fencer who does refuse to compete with a male at Wagner College. You'll see her, she gets disqualified. She refuses to do it, but this is how you will change things. You know, look, it's a little drop in the ocean, but it means something. In the old days, the feminist would have been against the guy stabbing the girl with a sword. Unfortunately, that's not exactly where they're at the moment. So I don't know what we can do for that girl. Let's find out her name and see what we can do for her, because it's like, that's the right thing. This girl, she loves fencing. That's great. Girls should be in sports, and they should have their own divisions in sports so they can compete against people who are biologically similar to them, and the best will rise to the top. Why is it that every time a boy who magically becomes a girl suddenly is the best swimmer? We know Connor's theory. It's that the penis is the propeller and that adds a little extra speed, but you get the point. You get the point. No one should be participating in this lie anymore. However, if you want to participate in the lie, you can go over to Minnesota, where Tim Walz declared March 31st Trans Visibility Day, because they are not going down without a fight.
They can send out any damn executive order they want from Washington, D.C., because in the state of Minnesota, it's my privilege to make sure that I therefore declare Monday, March 31st, 2025, as Transgender Day of Visibility across the state of Minnesota.
Yay! We needed more of that. Like, what? Nobody cares. You're 18. Your name's Scott. Now you want to call yourself Shirley. You want to put on a wig. You want to put on lipstick. Have at it. That's just fine. Why do you need a day? And it's not even about the day, because then a day turns into a month, and you have to have your flag everywhere and all the other nonsense. You treat people as individuals. You treat people equally. That's the thing that the country was founded upon. But it's not even about that. It's really about what they are doing to kids, right? A kid, a 5-year-old kid walks in and says, I'm a girl. And then they basically, in the old days, you would go under years and years of scrutiny and psychological treatments and all these things. And basically now they just put you through a machine, that will chemically castrate you and everything else. Why Tim Walz, he should have put on a wig there, put on lipstick like Steve Buscemi and was that Billy Madison? Remember that scene when Billy's apologizing to all the people he wronged in high school, and you see Buscemi just sitting there? Can we get a picture of that for later? Steve Buscemi putting on lipstick, and he puts on the wig and the lipstick, and he decides not to kill Billy Madison. If you got that reference, I love you. All right, so what did we do here? We did tariffs, we did border, we did education, we did boys and girls are different. Now let's talk about vaccines. Scott Gottlieb, who's been a board member of Pfizer for years and years and years, a guy who during COVID, clearly as a board member of Pfizer, was making a lot of money during COVID. He's very upset at the MAHA movement. Of course, MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. I thought we used to all be for health. It's good to not be drinking seed oils all the time and have a little beef towel with your French fries, for God's sakes. Don't make RFK depressed. Well, Scott Gottlieb, member of Pfizer, board member of Pfizer, he is now telling us that the MAHA movement is anti-vax.
But I do worry that a lot of the anti-vax sentiment, a lot of this kind of movement is really an anti-vax movement, and some of the MAHA stuff, for some people, is just the wrapping around what is really a much more deliberate anti-vax campaign. And the evidence of that to me is when you have people like the person who name-checked me this morning, who goes out and talks about some of these things around food and that are more kind of like MAHA related, however you define that. He gets attacked by the anti-vaxxers that he's not being anti-vax enough. So I think, the fellow travelers are taking heat from the anti-vaxxers because they're adhering to the MAHA part of the agenda, not the anti-vax part of the agenda. So that's very revealing to me. I think this is a much broader anti-vax movement with a lot of other things wrapped around it. And unfortunately, that may leave some consumers who believe in the other components of this agenda disappointed.
Might I say to you guys that after 3 years of being told we had to stay in our house and not get sun and order Chinese food in all the time, and if you went to a restaurant, if you were walking, so you're about 5'10" or so, you had to wear a mask, and when you sit, you don't have to wear a mask, and that if you get the COVID vaccine, you're not going to get nor transmit COVID, which we knew was a lie the second he said it. I mean, I think I did a show the next day saying, I don't think there's any evidence that's true, and that's obvious. And then the mandates that literally fired people from their jobs, and we can go through all the litany of lies and everything else. You can have your own opinion on vaccines. I'm not a doctor. I never encourage or discourage anyone to do it. You should make your decisions for yourself. You probably should, everybody should probably take a little better care of themselves, probably eat a little bit better, probably get a little sunshine and exercise and all of those things. That might help. We used to talk about something called herd immunity, all those things. And it's like, do you want to listen to these people anymore? So his argument basically is that Bobby Kennedy, who has spent his life not only trying to clean up the environment, but fight this corruption in government, that he created the MAHA movement, that the guy wants to stop making French fries in canola oil and use beef tallow instead, that somehow he's the bad guy at this. That somehow, I'm not saying Bobby Kennedy's perfect at everything. I'm sure he has his blind spots too. But somehow to try to tar the MAHA movement as anti-vax, actually, it was Bobby Kennedy himself during his own confirmation hearing that went through the list of vaccines that he is for. So your skepticism about the COVID vaccine is warranted and real, and make some health decisions for yourself. Now I want to jump over to this guy. He's a congressman from Massachusetts, Jake Auchincloss. Jake Auchincloss. I was on Piers with him the other day. He doesn't like me very much. I had never heard of him, but he seemed to know a lot about me. And here he is. He's going on and on. He does not like, maybe it wasn't just me. He doesn't like podcasters because we talk about things and we don't just bow to scientists.
The arrogance of these bros that have descended on Washington, D.C. I mean, these professional podcasters stand in front of a bunch of career scientists and say, what has science ever done? Oh, I don't know. Science eradicated measles until 2 months ago. Science means that a kid who grows up with cystic fibrosis now has a real chance at life. Science means that women who give birth now don't face a 1 in 5 chance of dying. They can now build families through IVF. Science is core to who we are as Americans, and their excuse for destroying our scientific enterprise with their conspiracy and quackery is because they're the first ones who ever thought that chronic disease was a problem. We will not take a lecture from people who are based in conspiracy and quackery and who are claiming the moral high ground on corruption when Brad Smith, who is running health and human services for DOJ, is hiring and firing his own regulators. Main Street Health reports to CMS, and he's deciding who gets to be there or not. This corruption and chaos will not stand. The American people will not stand for it. And Democrats are going to draw the contrast.
Jake, I guess I'm one of those podcast bros. Nobody. I have literally never heard anyone say, what has science ever done for me? Pre-COVID, everyone pretty much trusted the scientists. We trusted that layer. We trusted the institutions. Then, after 3 years of being bludgeoned and lied to, and it was largely, but not solely, because of your party and collusion with the media and all of the people who lied about everything and forced people not to go to their grandparents' funerals, and we can do the laundry list of things. Now, yes, there are some podcasters that are like, oh, somebody in a government white coat said something. I'm a little curious if that's true. And that's actually kind of good. You know, we showed you that video compilation the other day about how all the times that mainstream media was like, don't think for yourself. The new meme out there, remember during COVID, people are starting to think for themselves. Don't think for yourself. You wouldn't want to start thinking for yourself. Shit, what might happen? That would be nuts. Let's talk about CB Distillery for a moment, and then we'll have questions on the other side. If you're still tossing and turning all night and feeling edgy during the day, let me tell you about CBD from CB Distillery. Millions are turning to their CBD for relief because it works. In fact, over 90% of customers report better sleep with CBD. And it's not just sleep. CB Distillery offers targeted formulations for just about everything: sleep, stress, mood, and focus. They even have CBD for pets. And it's all made with the highest quality, clean ingredients. No fillers, just premium CBD. And with over 2 million satisfied customers and 100% money-back guarantee, CB Distillery is the source to trust. And for a limited time, you can save 25% off your entire purchase. Visit CB Distillery and use promo code Rubin. That's cbdistillery.com, promo code Rubin, cbdistillery.com. All right, I think before we get to the community Q&A, we have the picture of Steve Buscemi from Billy Madison. So you can see how I was making the point. I don't even remember what the point was that I was trying to make there, but anyway, it's a great movie if you haven't seen it. Okay, community Q&A, here we go. We got to do this kind of quick because I got a bunch of things today. Tony says, Dave mentioned Dennis Prager on his show on Wednesday. Can we please get an update on how he's doing? I'm not privy to share anything that is not public. However, Dennis, for the first time, you may have heard it. We should have played it on the show. Maybe we'll do it next week. He did release some audio of him speaking. So he can speak, which he could not for a long time. He took a really terrible fall right after the election. He has a lot of physical stuff right now. Again, I don't want to get ahead of my skis here. He is doing a little bit better. He is breathing on his own. He is speaking. He is hoping to return to the radio. I think even next month it'll be much shorter, not necessarily every day, certainly not 3 hours. But I will tell you that when I heard his voice, I was sitting outside. I had a steak on the grill and I was just sitting there flipping Twitter, and I saw this thing about Dennis Prager speaking. I literally cried because it's him again. The humor is there. It's all there. He's been through an awful lot, like an unimaginable tragedy here, and hopefully he'll continue to get physically better and everything else. And hopefully we'll see him on counter again. But it sounds like we'll at least hear him publicly again in the next month or so. Amanda says, what happened with going to Fort Knox and seeing if the gold is there? That was the plan. I don't know what happened to that. Do we know what happened? I mean, they're trying to do a lot of things right now, so give them a little grace. We'll see what happens. Goldie says, is there a restaurant you miss from when you lived in Cali? Eric, we went to the one restaurant that I miss in Cali. It's still there, actually, believe it or not, my favorite restaurant in LA. It was called, what the hell was it called? Boa. I was going to say, yeah, Boa. It was Boa Steakhouse on Sunset. It's kind of indoors, outdoors. It was a little bit of Hollywood kind of celebrity, cool vibe, great steaks. They do a T-bone in a cast iron with butter on it and some sage and rosemary, just perfect. And it was just the right amount of LA without being over the top LA. I've been back a couple times since, but you can't go home again. Cool Mom. What's that? Cantor's Deli?
Yeah, give them a shout out on Fairfax.
I know Cantor's Deli on Fairfax. I never went there, believe it or not. I don't think I ever had a pastrami at Cantor's Deli. Sue me. Cool Mom says, did you hear about the Republican Party headquarters in Albuquerque getting firebombed? I didn't. We glanced at the questions right before the show. Do we have an image or any information? So investigators probe fire at Republican Party's New Mexico headquarters that group says is arson. So I don't have more info than that at this point relative to the quote unquote good guys who are blowing up Teslas and breaking windows and etching swastikas in Cybertrucks. Like, nothing surprised me, so we'll stay tuned on that. Joe says, the world recently lost two giants, George Foreman and Val Kilmer. Any thoughts on Mr. Foreman and Mr. Kilmer? Foreman, He was an incredible boxer, but this is what I remember him mostly. It's from the George Foreman grill. I cannot tell you how many times. First off, I had that thing in college. So for basically 4 years of my life, I was making chicken and grilled cheese on that thing nonstop. I made steaks on that thing, and it had a little tray that the fat would all drip off into. And sometimes you'd be so stoned that you'd forget to put the tray there, and then the fat would just drip on the counter. And then you were also so stoned that you went to bed early, and then you'd wake up and there'd be dry. You know what I'm talking about. So that was George Foreman, also a great boxer, fun guy. He had a sitcom for a little while too. Val Kilmer, look, he was an incredible, incredible actor. Just passed away at 65 yesterday. You know, people really remember him from Doors, Top Gun. He did Batman after Michael Keaton, Island of Dr. Moreau, which I thought was a great movie. But I want to show you this, because when people say Val Kilmer, this is what I think of. We're going to show you like 20 seconds of a movie. I think it was from 1985. This is just like an exactly perfect, why were the 80s so great movie? And if you haven't seen it, this is Real Genius with Val Kilmer in 1985.
An exclusive institution for outstanding intellects, where the superstar of smarts is Chris Knight.
You have a jacuzzi? Absolutely.
His hobbies violate the laws of gravity.
What are you doing out there? Floating, sir.
His homework could win a Nobel Prize.
He's one of the 10 finest minds in the country.
And his IQ is higher than most people can count.
I can't stand it. Have you ever seen a body like this before in your life?
Real genius.
I didn't even realize till just then, like that kind of fits the theme of the show today. And like, cause he's like the punk who's really smart and he's fighting the system and he's at the elite university and everything. But it's just a perfect, you can see it's like that perfect 80s kind of Revenge of the Nerds kind of movie. So yeah, 65 years old. And then he was also, you know, if you didn't see it, Top Gun Maverick, which, you know, that's from what now, 3 years ago, which was an incredible, you know, reboot, really part 2. He was in that just briefly because his health was failing, but he was a great actor. Conservative Chica says, Dave, do you agree with how Trump has handled the Canada situation? In my opinion, his rhetoric will cause Canadians to vote their communist candidate as opposed to the more conservative candidate. So there's an interesting thing happening right now where Trudeau has stepped down. They've got the new guy who kind of looks just like an average, where Trudeau is always like this, and I went to drama school, and I'm going to go to the madrasa and tell you how great women are. You know, then you have this new guy, what's his name, Carney, and he just comes off as like a sort of middle-aged nothing, but he basically has the Trudeau policies. Your argument, and I've heard this before, is that because Trump has sort of started this war, this trade war, let's say, it gives a little energy to the liberals because they're going to fight Trump more than, say, the conservatives, right? So there's probably some element of that. But if Canada has a chance, they have got to get the liberals out of office. It's as simple as that. It doesn't matter if it's Trudeau or Carney or anyone else. You've got to get Paulabé in, or there's Maxime Bernier is still running from the Freedom Party, I think. Maybe Danielle Smith, who's running, you know, Western Canada. Like, you just got to try something different because it's not working. Elizabeth says, I know you're not a soda drinker anymore, but if you had to choose, would you pick Pepsi or Coke? I haven't had a Coke or Pepsi in a long time. I would choose Coke. I think I would just do Coke the soda? I'm not sure. Let's talk about 1775 coffee. One more on the other side. 1775 and Rumble just unleashed the first anti-aging coffee and insane longevity bundle at half price. This limited edition bundle is a powerhouse collection designed to energize your days, sharpen your mind, and help you feel younger. Inside, you're getting their top-selling anti-aging coffee, the ultra-rare Peaberry Blend, an exclusive 1775 branded tumbler, plus more premium coffee and limited edition merch you can't find anywhere else. That's a $200 value just for $100. But here's the catch. Only 1,000 bundles are being released. Once they're gone for good. And if that's not enough, every dollar you spend gets you an entry to win the Cybertruck and $30,000 cash reward. But you've got only 1 month left to enter. Go to 1775coffee.com/Rubin and use code Rubin to save 15% off your longevity pack. Drink coffee that fuels your freedom, your values, and your life. All right, let's keep rolling. Olaf says, so Dave, what is your favorite fruit? Well, you know, we're here in Florida. And in Florida, this was the home of citrus. Everyone knows Florida oranges, right? Florida oranges, all the citrus you can possibly imagine. We have a lot of citrus trees out there. We've got some oranges, we've got some tangelos, we've got some limes and lemons. But, you know, I think it was about a decade ago, there was this insane fungus that hit Florida, and the orange crops have been completely destroyed. I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce this. They call it HLB. It's Huang Glongbing fungus, basically destroyed the orange crop. So it's very hard to grow citrus out here. So we're growing some, but at like a massive scale, it's really, really hard to do. So we did plant because we're trying to grow things. We've got a ton of mangoes here, and we're growing avocados and a few other things. But on the citrus side, jackfruit. So that is some jackfruit that we're growing right now. We took that picture this morning, and they're tasty, not too sweet, just right. You can pop them in and take a walk. You're not going to choke, and you'll get a little citrus, probably some vitamin C. Talway says, on the culture war side, have you heard about Rachel Ziegler suing Disney because they have frozen her out of any future projects? Some online are comparing her suit to the one filed by Gina Carano. Do you think the cases are similar, and is this a sign we're turning the ship around? That's interesting. I haven't heard of that specifically, but look, Gina Carano was fired largely because she had sort of come out kind of conservative. It was at the height of cancel culture. She was talking about vaccines, and I think she tweeted a meme, like kind of an anti-woke meme, and then they took her out, right? And she was going to be in, I think which one was it? She was going to be in Boba Fett or one of those things. I don't know about the Ziegler lawsuit specifically, but Disney would be wise. I don't watch Disney movies anymore, but Disney would be, I would say, fairly wise at purely the economic level that this girl, who not only did the movie fail, but she then went on this crazy press tour saying she didn't like the original movie, that people should just come and line up for her because she's so freaking talented. Like, she just came off so horribly that why would Disney want to be associated with her? I don't know how she can sue Disney for not wanting to do future movies with her unless she had like a 3-film deal or something like that, in which case there's a legit legal issue, but that's what lawyers fight about. Like maybe Disney's arguing we had a clause. If you come off like a crazy lunatic, we are able to fire you, and now if that's the case, they most likely settle. It's as simple as that. Chipster says, when will we see any of the savings from Doge? I mean, well, basically, Trump did say that at some point they'd like to give 10% of the savings back to the people. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but I think over time, as we start to realize that we are wasting less money, that will help the economy overall. We'll print less money, perhaps. We will take less money from you. Our dollar will be worth more, like basic economic stuff, which again, I hope I can discuss with Tom and Sowell pretty soon. Kolarau says, I have taken issue with conservative media's reference to most of the opposing side by calling them liberals. In my opinion, they are not, as I find they are more like subversive revolutionaries who wish us harm, encouraging, excusing, and celebrating violence. What do you think of taking on this description, revolutionaries, when referring to them? Would it be too escalatory? No, it wouldn't. Look, I wrote a book. I think there's several copies of it around here somewhere. The first book that I wrote, Don't Burn This Book, was a defense of classical liberalism. I think in the last decade, it was probably the #1 selling book defending liberalism. The word liberal has been completely hijacked from an American sense. If you're in England right now and you say to somebody, I'm a liberal, they think that you're a liberal in the way you mean it. What did a liberal used to believe? A liberal used to believe in logic and reason and individual rights and not group identity and largely laissez-faire economics. That was the old liberal position. Free speech, definitely a part of that, of course, right? The liberals of today are progressives, and progressives, yes, they are far closer to revolutionaries. The progressive wing saw the soft underbelly, the tolerance of liberalism. They got in there, and the liberals did not know how to defend liberalism. If you want more on this, I just did a podcast with Winston Marshall just last week in New York City, where we got into that quite extensively. So it's a damn shame. I wish in some sense I could still describe myself as an old school liberal and make the argument, I mean, I try to do this on the show every day, make the argument why that fits within the MAGA movement, because I'm certainly not, let's say, the most traditional conservative for several reasons. But yes, cleaning up language can be tricky. One more question, then we got to go. Hey, Dave, if you ever, this is Eurasian. Hey, Dave, if you ever get on Newsom's podcast, can you challenge him to a one-on-one basketball game? You know, blown out knee, notwithstanding, getting the stem cells on April 10th. I would challenge him to that. We have said, we're in touch with his people. We told them we'll do it. I will do it live. I will do it unedited, whatever he wants to do. And I promise you, I will tell him all of the horrible things I've said about him here, right to his face. I look forward to talking to you, Gab. No post-game show, right? Because yeah. Sorry, guys, we're super crunched today on time. We're pre-taping a bunch of stuff. We'll make it up to you. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
In Newcastle County, Delaware. Yeah. right in front of the Applebee's. You know, they've been to the Applebee's before. So this, Elias, free car wash. Here we go.
Oh, let me get that. Just
yeah, that's it. Get them.